Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The FBI wants a massive new complex for their Washington, D.C. area-based activities. They want to spend more than $300 million on that complex, though the FBI has an employee base that's about 2.3% of the United States military. Mr. Speaker, they're literally asking for something that is larger than the Pentagon for the FBI, and so my amendment would disallow any planning, spending, distribution of funds for that purpose. I don't believe that the FBI deserves a massive new headquarters or Washington field office. The activities inside of Washington, the greater Washington metro area, have really driven a lot of the investigative work we have done. It's not bad folks from the FBI out at some field office in Middle America or elsewhere in the country. It is the Washington, D.C. based activities that have pressured other field offices for no good law enforcement reason. It's the D.C. based entities that have suppressed credible investigative leads into criminal conduct over the objections of other bureaus and offices. And they've initiated investigations into American citizens merely for engaging in constitutionally protected speech. They've attempted to entrap members of the United States Senate by holding false classified briefings. That's testimony we got from Senators Grassley and Senator Johnson. They've also worked hard to censor factual information harmful to their preferred political candidates, notably the Hunter Biden laptop story that the FBI based in the D.C. metro area were involved in cajoling censorship of. Building a new headquarters would condone, reinforce, and enable the Washington field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's nefarious behavior. We shouldn't do it, and we should adopt this amendment to ensure that's the case. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I claim the time in opposition.
Gentleman is recognized.
And Mr. Chair, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack.
Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my thanks to the minority side for giving me an opportunity to speak. I rise in opposition to the gentleman from Florida's amendment. We're not always going to hate the FBI. I realize there are people on my side of the aisle that don't like some of the activities of the FBI. I'm not going to pick an argument on that. But what I will argue is that it is bad policy for the Congress to be taking steps to deny a federal agency that is in serious need, in my opinion, of an improvement to their headquarters. Now, notice I said improvement. I didn't say some massive, big expansion necessarily. But what I do know is that when I toured the FBI headquarters, I saw it in a state of disrepair that is going to need the attention of the owners of that property, and that's us. And so to deny the FBI the opportunity to be able to explore other alternatives, I think is a bit short-sighted. Give me an additional 30 seconds.
Additional 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized.
The fact is the building is crumbling, and there's going to be a need to do something. What that something is, I'm not an expert on, but I think it would be wrong for us to be taking this action today, pursuant to this amendment, without having at least a hearing and an opportunity for the people responsible for the facilities, FBI, GSA, any other stakeholder, to be able to help us understand what the situation is today and what the needs are of tomorrow. That discussion can take place, should take place, but I think it's a bit short-sighted and premature for us to be taking the action that this amendment would call for here today, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it is not my grave concern that the FBI's building is crumbling. It is my grave concern that the civil liberties of Americans are crumbling, and I wish we were more worried about that and less worried about whether or not we got new carpet and wallpaper at the FBI building. My colleague from Arkansas says that the FBI headquarters is in a state of disrepair. Mr. Speaker, it is the FBI itself that is in a state of disrepair. And so while my colleague from Arkansas may be right that we may not always hate the FBI, how about while we are most concerned about the things they are doing, we not go build them a new $300 million building? My colleague says there needs to be a hearing. Well, let me tell you about the hearing that mattered to me, and frankly, many of my Democrat colleagues who are also worried about civil liberties. The hearing where we learned that the FBI has conducted over 278,000 illegal queries on the FISA system. Or the hearing that said that the Inspector General found that 38 times an hour these people were violating FISA. The notion that we would stand here and defend them, frankly, is deeply disappointing, and I think those folks deserve to sit in the rat-infested J. Edgar Hoover building until they get their act straight with America's civil liberties. I reserve.
Gentleman from Florida reserves. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Hoyer.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I thank my friend for yielding. I thank the chairman for his comments. And I understand what the gentleman, Mr. Gaetz, is saying, and his ire is directed at people. The people will be transitory. People come and go, members come and go from the Congress of the United States. What will not be transitory is the ability to have a critically important agency for us in the long term to carry out its duty, which is, after all, to defend America, our Constitution, from enemies both foreign and domestic, and their duties have been changed to a significant degree since 9/11. So what this structure that is proposed to be built is supposed to do is to accommodate not only the fact that the present building is falling down and is dangerous to those who work there, some of whom are clerical people not making any decisions with respect to policy. And I would think the gentleman would be concerned about their safety, as am I, and as the chairman, and the safety of those, frankly, who walk around the building. Because if the gentleman visited there, he's going to see netting around the building because the concrete is falling off the building. So I would share, obviously, the chairman's view, and I'm not totally objective. They're going to build it somewhere in this region. I live in this region. I'm supportive of this region. But I think to transfer ire against the people who are in positions in the FBI at this point in time. But this building, when and if it's built, is going to be built sometime in the future, but is absolutely essential. And FBI directors preceding the present FBI director for a number of times have said this is needed. Experts have said it's needed. The GSA says it's needed. And I would hope that we would not, because of the temporary displeasure or ire or anger or stronger feeling, if you want to express it, of the present occupants or the actions they are taking, would not adversely reflect on the judgment as to whether or not a new Capitol facility for a critically important agency is necessary at this time. So I would hope the gentleman would withdraw his amendment. I don't expect that to happen. And if it doesn't withdraw it, I hope it's defeated, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves. Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Where I think Leader Hoyer is correct is that this effort would be incomplete in the absence of major reforms to FISA and the other authorities that are abused no matter who the people are. But the people have changed, and the corruption has remained the same at the FBI. Under Republican and Democrat leadership, we've seen consistent abuses of America's civil liberties, and to take tax money away from our fellow Americans who are the victims at times of these abuses and then build a new center for the FBI seems deeply unwise to me. I'll yield.
Gentleman yields.
I don't want any misinterpretation that I adopted the gentleman's premise as to the activities of the FBI. I disagree with it.
I appreciate that clarification, and I don't think anyone would confuse your views with mine as it relates to the FBI.
Thank God for that. But let me say that in the concept of what we're doing, this is necessary. Forgetting about any of the other issues. I understand what you're saying. I disagree with you, but I appreciate your position and why you're saying it. but to be so, in my opinion, short-sighted that we delay further. This building has been delayed. The first request for new facilities was 2009. So we're now talking a decade and a half, essentially.
Yeah.
So that was my point. But I don't want to be confused that I adopt your premise on the FBI activities.
Well, I appreciate the distinction, and I am grateful that there are a number of Democrats like Ms. Lofgren and Mr. Nadler who are working very closely with Republicans to try to reform these authorities so that people's Fourth Amendment rights are violated, but doing that alongside creating some new $300 million monstrosity for the FBI that is quite literally larger than the Pentagon sends entirely the wrong message, and that would support adoption of this amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
We stand with the bipartisan statesmen who've argued against this amendment, and we oppose the amendment, and we also yield back.
Gentleman.